The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc.
Welcome to the Fed15 podcast, presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we discuss the latest news and info the feds need to know in 15 minutes-ish. Sometimes I get long-winded or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or just starting out in your career, we've got you covered. So grab your coffee, your energy drink, your green juice, whatever gets you rolling. Kick back and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed. We are your host. I'm Dan Sipe, and I am joined by surprise guest, Jen Meyer. How you doing, Jen?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
I am well. You and I, even though there is a staggering difference in our ages, I'm way old. We are both experiencing graduation season. And I know your daughter just graduated early, shocker. You have a smart kid from Villanova, that only produced a pope. So, what was
that? And also it produced the Nova Knicks. That's a very timely topic right now.
Three of them, right? Are on that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they won a national championship for Villanova in 2016. I don't know if they're going to win, but
they're up 3-1.
It's been an exciting series so far. I know.
Okay,
I know.
And as long as
you never say never.
Yeah, as long as nobody shows up and delays everybody getting in for 3 hours. So that the players can focus on playing the game. So I'd imagine it's been pretty exciting around Meyer household with that graduation.
Yeah. And congrats to you as well. I mean, I think as we walked out of my daughter's graduation, I said, I've got 2 college graduates. I feel like I've done a good job. So there you go.
Indeed you have. We just had a reasonably good sized graduation party here for Colin. He had a little more of a circuitous route. He did not graduate early, but definitely made it through. And now, God help me, starts working on his MCATs. So a couple of things for the audience. Driver carries no cash because kids have advanced degrees coming. And you don't have to worry about me retiring anytime soon. I am just going to get older on camera. So Jen, I could talk kids and grads all day, but I know our folks are looking forward to what we brought to them. And we're kind of all healthcare all the time on this one because that gets overlooked, especially by our dopey competitors, that say, oh, everything you need in 1 hour webinar. We'll teach you everything. Well, there's a lot, folks. And we're covering a couple of things that can really affect you in retirement. And Jen will be talking about IRMAA and what that means when you have Medicare. And then I'll talk about the 5-year rule for carrying FEHB into retirement. So Jen, kick us off with best practices for understanding IRMAA and how to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that in my experience so far, IRMAA is one of those things that tends to surprise people the most. And I was reflecting a couple weeks ago, the last time I was on the podcast, Sure. I talked about tax brackets, right?
Oh, yeah.
And trying to manage tax brackets in retirement. And so very fitting that today I'm going to be talking about IRMAA brackets, because I think oftentimes people go into retirement with a little bit of I know I have to think about those tax brackets, but people get surprised all the time with IRMAA. So let's start with the basics, right? So IRMAA applies to Medicare, right? And I think most people know at age 65, you apply for Medicare. Most people will get Medicare Part A, which is the free part, right? It covers things that happen inside a hospital setting. Medicare Part B and Medicare Part D are the parts of Medicare that IRMAA potentially can impact, right? So Medicare Part B, Medicare Part D both have premiums, right? And so IRMAA, and what IRMAA stands for, just because, a lot of times we throw these terms around and we don't always know what they mean. But the translation, if you will, for IRMAA is income-related monthly adjustment amount. What that means to our feds is that if your income is at certain levels, you're going to pay higher premiums than other people. And that difference is what they call the IRMAA, right? So typically, when somebody applies for Medicare, they're going to get a letter saying this is what your premium will be. And sometimes in that letter, it says you're going to be subject to IRMAA. And so again, IRMAA is just an additional premium that is based on income, right? So let's think about that income, right? So for most feds in retirement, you're going to have your FERS or your CSRS annuity. You're going to have Social Security if you're drawing. You're also going to have your traditional TSP, traditional IRA withdrawals. Those all get factored in every year into your IRMAA, your Medicare B premium. And for some of our feds, they might have other sources of income, maybe a military pension. Maybe the spouse has income. Maybe the spouse is also a Fed retiree. And so there can be, it doesn't take a whole lot to go into higher Medicare B brackets. The point of the discussion today, though, is that sometimes you can do some things to manage that premium, right? Importantly, when we talk about tax brackets, right, if you go into the next higher tax bracket, you're only paying that higher tax on the amount that you go over. With Medicare Part B and D, if you go $1 over an income bracket, now you're paying that higher income, that higher premium for the entire 12 months. It only takes $1 over.
Ouch.
Yeah. It's very easy to do, and we see it all the time. The pension and the Social Security, those are things that, you're going to get, right? But oftentimes we see kind of what I would describe almost as one-off or more occasional sources of income that will really impact your Medicare B brackets. And these are the things that I think most people don't anticipate, right? So first and foremost, Roth conversions. And we all know Roth conversions are a huge topic this year because you can do Roth conversions within your TSP for the first time. And so, but Roth conversions will impact Medicare B, Medicare D premiums, and therefore you need to be mindful of these Medicare brackets. Other things, sale of property, sale of a business, large TSP withdrawals. I know for sure, Dan, you've had these conversations too, where somebody retires and they anticipate, well, I'll just take a big draw out of my TSP to pay off my mortgage or pay off debt or buy a vacation home or just buy whatever next home we're planning to move to, right? All of those withdrawals, if they're coming out of a traditional TSP or traditional IRA, potentially can very easily throw you into a higher Medicare B bracket. The other one that oftentimes doesn't really come into play until it might be too late are required minimum distributions, right? So for most of our retirees, somewhere between 73 and 75, they're going to be forced to take money out, and those RMDs also can very easily throw people into higher Medicare B brackets. So what can we do about it, right? These are the things that we do here all the time with people, right? My conversations every week, I have to say it's probably less than 5% of the meetings that I have on a weekly basis where we aren't talking about these things. So really, really important, if you don't know about it, to become educated about it. When we talk about Roth conversions, because again, that's such a hot topic right now, the benefits, right, are you could potentially lower your future RMDs and lower future tax brackets, and therefore potentially lower future Medicare B, Medicare D premiums. You could also potentially provide greater flexibility for surviving spouses, right? The thing you have to be careful of, and, again, I can't emphasize it enough, is not only do you have to pay attention to your tax brackets, but you also have to pay attention to Medicare B brackets. Now, other things that you can do, you could spread these large withdrawals out over a couple different tax years, right? That's really smart strategy. You can align your taxable account and sales withdrawals with charitable giving to offset some of that additional income if you know you're going to have a lot of income in a given year. Finally, I'll talk just a little bit about IRMAA appeals because it is possible to appeal your IRMAA, right? And I know a very typical situation that we run into is that first year.
Sure.
If somebody is just retired and we know that they look back 2 years, well, people will say, but I'm going to be retired. So my income is changed now. And what happens there is you can file an appeal and you can say, well, my income is different because I've now retired, right? Qualifying life events like that can be good reasons to appeal. Unfortunately, things like Roth conversions and big capital gain sales and transactions aren't necessarily going to be viewed in that same way because it's not really a life event. It's something that you did voluntarily.
Sure.
So you have to be mindful of that just in case anybody is wondering about that appeal process. The appeal form that you can Google it and find it is SSA-44 is the appeal form that you can use. So bottom line is there are ways to plan around these situations, right? And sometimes they're unavoidable, but the point is that with proactive planning, you can make good decisions and make the best decisions and not just get a surprise. Because if there is one thing we know, we don't like getting tax or Medicare B higher expense surprises, especially if it could have been prevented.
Words to live by.
That's all I've got on that. Yeah, that's all I've got on that. But why don't you go ahead and take the 5-year rule on FEHB?
I will indeed. And folks, I just want to touch on something here. This is emblematic of what Jen brings to the table for feds every single day. We have something in what we do called Part 2, where feds can get a meeting with members of our team, amazing people like Jen, to explain this type of stuff. And what I'm trying to do is work towards helping the greater universe to understand that Part 2 can follow everything and anything that you've encountered. So if you went to somebody else's stupid seminar and only got 1 hour's worth and had a ton of questions, hit us up for a Part 2. We'll walk you through it. No pitches, no strings, anything like that. What you just experienced is the caliber of Jen Meyer and what she brings to the federal community. So thank you for that, Jen, and thank you for doing it with us.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, thanks, Dan.
5-year rule, man, I'll tell you, this is something that I am just amped about right now because we have 350,000 feds who left service in the last 18 months because of you name it. Well, here's the thing. After the pension, I think the most valuable benefit is carrying that health care into retirement. So I'm going to sprinkle a little extra flavor on this that differs from the article. You should still read the article. But I'm going to talk to the folks that might be looking at leaving before they're actually retiring or things like that. So I'm going to give you some best practices to put you in a position where you may be able to make sure that you can come back and get health insurance later. So first off, FEHB coverage does not automatically continue into retirement unless you meet specific eligibility requirements before leaving federal service, specifically retirement or retiring in a certain way that you suspend your FEHB and then come back to it later. Failure to meet those requirements, so not knowing the rules, just missing some things, can prevent our retirees and families from continuing that FEHB coverage. And we never, ever, ever want that to happen. Okay. So what the FEHB rule actually says, you must be enrolled in or covered under FEHB for 5 years immediately before retirement, or you must be enrolled or covered in FEHB for all service years since first eligible to enroll. So that's a case where if somebody's on a discontinued service retirement or a VERA or something like that, that would kick in. So you need to be careful about this, but coverage under your spouse's FEHB plan as family can count, but you always want to review this. So if you are someone, and you're watching this, who went out under a RIF and weren't able to retire, what I'm going to urge you to do is grab the last couple years of pay stubs and just put them in a file. In the event that you decide to come back, and let's say that you had 4 years with federal service and you had 4 years in FEHB, you can come back for 1 year and be in FEHB, get a 5-year retirement if you go out at 62 and carry that health insurance. So these are the life hacks that I'm trying to get out into the universe there. So some of the common situations that can create problems late in career. Your spouse gets a job and the plans are amazing and super cheap. So you get out and you go over there. Talk to somebody. Talk to somebody before you do that. Reach out to us. Hit us up for a part 2. We'll talk you through it. But that could blow up in your face. Okay. If you are, for whatever reason, evaluating a temporary position, so you're in career service, go to a temporary, that could trip you up. I'm trying hard to imagine how that would happen, but I'm trying to cover all bases here. Don't assume that Medicare satisfies your FEHB eligible requirements if you're later in your career. And the interruptions in that FEHB coverage can absolutely disrupt the eligibility timeline and make it difficult to carry it into retirement. So what does count and doesn't cause a problem? You can change FEHB plans. You can move from self-only to family. You can remain covered under your spouse's FEHB plan. That's not going to cause any problems. It's not going to affect that continuous coverage rule. The key requirement, though, is avoiding a gap. When in doubt, verify your coverage with HR or OPM for making any changes. And if you are thinking that you might be going out before you want to, again, store up those pay stubs. How do I know this? We encountered somebody who had a federal career up through the early 90s, put together a number of years, left service, went out into real estate, did great, came back and worked for just a couple of months in the commissary at the airbase in Jacksonville and got their FEHB, continued the 5-year, went out on retirement, carried the FEHB into retirement. So these things are doable, and we know the nuts and bolts and the life hacks. Mid-career benefit decisions can follow you into retirement. Okay. So you want to make sure that you don't do something that interrupts that 5-year continuity. So I will put this out as an ironclad rule. 5 years out from retirement, verify your coverage. And if you don't have it, stick around if you can, because it is absolutely worth it. So many eligibility issues are caused by small coverage decisions rather than one single huge mistake. Okay. So 5 years out, start that, confirm that your coverage aligns with the 5-year rule, verify those HR records, and ensure that your retirement timing is carrying that over. And one of the practical ways, again, to avoid those last minute surprises, review. I'm beating the drum here. You can't have too much knowledge or understanding, and treat the rule as a checkpoint, not a barrier. So it's not in your way. It's something that you're fulfilling to make sure that you get the maximum benefit going into retirement. And that is my wish for every single Fed that's out there, that you're in a position to carry that FEHB into retirement. Maybe you have a big pension, maybe you have a small pension, but that going forward is going to be a big benefit for you. And that's what I got, Jen.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'm going to add on one comment there, because I literally had a meeting yesterday, a part 2 meeting with somebody who said he started the conversation with, I'm about 10 years out, so it's probably too early. And I was like, no, it's not too early. You need to be thinking about these things before the last 2 years, right? I mean, it really is important. And that 5-year rule is one of those things that, and I've met with people, I'm sure you have too, that ended up having to work a little bit longer than they wanted to because, somewhere along the line, they jumped on their spouse's coverage or something like that. So yeah, big deal, big advice, and make sure.
2 words, worth it.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today.
Yep.
But again, we will be back next week. Actually, I don't know I'll be back, but I know Caitlin will be back next week to bring you all the latest updates you need to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
And be sure, please, if you haven't done so, subscribe to this podcast. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to fill up your inbox. But what you're going to do, which is super important, if you find this to be valuable, simply by doing that, you're telling the YouTube or the Spotify algorithm that this is worthwhile stuff for feds. And we are super proud of the fact that we bring you Jen Meyer with the straight advice right here. You don't have to work with us. You don't have to remember us after this. But if it helps you, that's important. So please, that's an easy way to vote in favor of all feds by subscribing. Then those algorithms are going to go, okay, we want to show this to lots of feds. And if the spirit moves you, please remember to share it with your friends and colleagues.
Absolutely. And I'll wrap up with saying, for more information on the topics that we covered today, you can find our articles via the Serving Those Who Serve website. Check out the blog, blog.stwserve.com. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. It's called The Weekly Serving. It ends up in your inbox every week to give you the latest news and information. So,
absolutely. And don't forget those live webinars pretty much every single week. The amazing live Q&A, nothing like it out there. None of this dopey 1 hour. That's all you need. We've got them going. Couple of good ones coming up. On July 2nd, we have the incredibly popular TSP webinar. People are jamming into this to get to understand the in-plan Roth conversions, things like that. So that's July 2nd from 1 to 4. Caitlin will be presenting that. I'll be hosting and trying not to drag it down too much in quality. And then on July 8th, we have our first webinar. That is just a great starter and primer. That's from 11 till 2. You're stuck with me as presenter, but Caitlin will be there. So that will raise the level of what we're doing. And if you would like a more personalized approach to getting you to a level of understanding about your benefits so you can make informed and comfortable decisions, you can reach out to us at meetings at stwserve.com, and we will get you set up. We are happy to assist any way we can.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's it for today, right?
Yep. So thanks for listening to Fed15. I'm Dan Sight.
And I'm Jen Meyer.
And I'll see you next week, and we'll make sure we get Jen back here again.
Awesome. Great to be with you. Take care.